You set everything up perfectly. The right day, the right hour, the right tools on the table. You even feel that little spark of, okay, this is real. And then the next morning, same mood, same patterns, same overthinking, same friction in your life. So you assume the obvious. I'm missing a better tool, a stronger symbol, a more accurate timing. Here's the risk if you keep going like that. You turn your practice into a shopping list, and you never become the operator. You collect handles, but you don't generate leverage. And eventually, you either burn out or you slide into superstition and anxiety. By the end of this video, you'll understand what magical virtue of the soul actually means in this system, in plain terms. So you stop treating the operator as optional, and you start knowing what actually moves the needle. This system makes an uncomfortable move right at the start, before it talks about tools, before it talks about plants, metals, seals, stars. It starts with you, with the human being, with the inner structure. Why? Because the claim here is simple. If you don't understand the little world inside you, you won't understand how the big world outside you responds. Not in theory, in practice. If you've ever studied correspondences, you already know what they promise. This thing in nature matches that quality. This time opens that current. This symbol keys into that pattern. But here's the real question. What is doing the matching? What is doing the opening? What is actually turning the key? That's what virtue of the soul answers. And if you miss it, your practice becomes decorative. Let's make it concrete. Imagine two people doing the exact same operation. Same timing, same setup, same words, same materials. One person walks away with a clear shift. Their mind gets quiet, the decision becomes obvious, the outcome moves. The other person walks away unchanged. Or worse, more tense than before, like they did it wrong. Most people blame the technique. This system blames something else, the operator's leverage. Because tools don't create force. Tools shape force. They're like a lens. A lens doesn't create sunlight. It concentrates it. If the lens is smeared, cracked, constantly moving, you can stand in the brightest sun and still fail to focus anything. Adding more lenses doesn't fix it. Buying a bigger lens doesn't fix it. You fix the virtue. Then the tool matters. That's what magical virtue of the soul is pointing to. The soul as the concentrating power, the focusing capacity, the inner leverage that turns correspondence into effect. So what is it, without vague vibes language? In this system, virtue of the soul is basically three things working together. Attention that can hold, not endless intensity, not strain, just the ability to stay with one thing without leaking everywhere. Imagination that can imprint, not fantasy. The capacity to form a clear inner image that doesn't collapse the second you doubt it. Well, that can commit, not aggression. The ability to choose and stay chosen, instead of constantly reopening the decision. When those three are weak, the practice becomes tool-heavy. When those three are strong, the practice becomes simple, almost embarrassingly simple. And here's a quiet detail most people miss. This isn't only spiritual, it's psychological and practical, because your life already proves it. Think about any outcome you've ever created without magic. Learning a skill, building a body, making money, repairing a relationship. The people who succeed aren't the ones with the most gadgets. They're the ones with inner leverage. They can hold attention, keep the image alive, and commit through resistance. This system is just saying, that same leverage is the first ingredient here too. Now, here are three modern traps that show you're doing it backwards. Trap number 1, tool hopping. You keep switching methods because you're trying to buy leverage. New deck, new app, new timing method, new symbol. It feels productive, but it's actually avoidance, because the real work would be stabilizing the operator. Trap number 2, timing obsession. You become flawless at calendars, but you stay chaotic inside. So you get the worst of both worlds. You feel late spiritually, and you're still stuck in the same loops. Timing without virtue becomes a control behavior. Trap number 3, outsourcing authority to signs. You don't use symbols as mirrors. You use them as permission slips. And when the sign is unclear, you freeze. That's not guidance. That's dependence. If any of those hit, don't shame yourself. They're common, but they're also a clear diagnostic. You're treating the operator like an optional accessory. Here's the first attention reset. I want you to answer honestly. When you do your practice, do you feel more capacity afterward or more checking? More capacity looks like, I can act, I can decide, I can move. More checking looks like, did it work? Was that the right hour? Should I do it again? Maybe I need a stronger method. If practice increases checking, the virtue is not leading. The tool is, and tools can't lead. They can only shape what you bring. So where are we? Up to now, we've separated 2 things. The handle, tools, correspondences, timing, symbols. The force, the soul's leverage, attention, imprint, commitment. Next, I'll show you how to tell quickly whether you actually have leverage in the moment. Not as a self-help checklist, as a practitioner's diagnostic. Here are 4 clean signs your virtue is online. Sign 1, you can hold one intention without bargaining. No inner negotiation. No silent, but what if? Just a clean aim. Sign 2, your inner image stays stable under discomfort. You don't need to feel good. You can still keep the shape when emotion fluctuates. Sign 3, your choices align after the practice. Not perfection, alignment. You don't do an operation for clarity and then spend the day feeding distraction. You move in the same direction you invoked. Sign 4, you feel quieter, not higher, not hyped, not manic, just settled, like the inner noise got less persuasive. If those are present, even a simple act can carry weight. If they're absent, the system would say, stop escalating tools. Restore virtue first. Now the practical question. How do you restore virtue without turning this into forced positive thinking or rigid protocols? You do it the same way you build any real capacity, by training the basics that generate leverage. Here are 3 ways to think about it that stay grounded. First, train attention like a craftsman, not like a performer. The goal isn't drama. It's steadiness. If your mind can't stay with one thing in normal life, it won't suddenly become precise because a candle is lit. Second, clean up contradiction. If you invoke a direction and then live the opposite, you're teaching your own mind that your will is negotiable. Virtue collapses under self-contradiction. Third, reduce noise before you add power. Most people want stronger methods. This system would often recommend fewer inputs, less compulsive consumption, less jumping between meanings, less seeking external confirmation. Not because less is spiritual, because leverage needs stability. And when that stability is there, tools stop being props. They become what they were meant to be, a way to shape a force you already carry. So the soul claim here is not abstract. It's saying the operator is the first instrument, and if you treat yourself as optional, everything else becomes fragile. But if you build inner leverage, this whole system becomes simpler, cleaner, and more effective, and your practice starts showing up in your life, in decisions, timing, relationships, focus, momentum. That's the promise. If you want more of this kind of practical decoding, you can like and subscribe, and I'll keep mapping the system in a way you can actually use.